My name's Aryajit, and hello to everyone online. Over the past 5 months in this class, you've been exploring the 6 Paramitas, which are the usually translated as the 6 perfections that the Bodhisattva trains in. So the Bodhisattva is like the heroic figure who is, if you like, the aspect, the kind of compassionate aspect of enlightenment of the Buddha, who is dedicated himself or herself to saving all beings. So it's a kind of a being in the world trying to save all beings. And the Bodhisattva trains in the 6 Paramitas, which we've kind of been looking at over the past 5 months. So they start with generosity, morality, patience, energy, and concentration, and a culminating wisdom, prajna paramita. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, and I'll say a lot about the Bodhisattva as well. So it's quite challenging to give a talk about prajna. Prajna isn't just kind of knowledge and wisdom, it's kind of supreme wisdom, so it's the highest wisdom. And that's quite challenging to talk about, especially if you don't have direct experience of, which I don't, I'm afraid to say. I'm not, if you hadn't already guessed. It's also challenging because prajna is said to be beyond words, beyond concepts. So it's not something you can pin down in words. So really, it's something we can only kind of suggest and kind of hint at. And it's also challenging. I've got various people who are going to give readings today. I need to remember who is giving what reading. So challenging that point of view as well. Also, one other disclaimer I'll just make is that an intellectual understanding of prajna, what Buddhism says wisdom is not to be mistaken for the real thing. But we need to start somewhere, and an intellectual understanding of wisdom gives us a springboard in which we can actually gain the real experience of it. So that's what hopefully we'll try and do today. So the prajna paramita and the Bodhisattva ideal is kind of a restatement of the Buddha's teachings, which kind of came about centuries after the original Buddha had died. So it's a kind of a restatement of Buddhism, which is something that throughout its history, Buddhism has always done. It's kind of taken the original teachings of the Buddha and kind of restated them in a way which is faithful to the original spirit of the Buddha's teachings, but which are relevant to the culture and the time and place in which Buddhism has found itself in. So it's spread all over the world. And it's taken on different forms, different ways of communicating the essential kind of truth of the Buddha's teaching in ways which are relevant to the audience which is in front of it. And so in the modern West today, we're trying to find ways to communicate the Dharma, trying to understand it first of all, have an experience of it, and then try and communicate it in ways that are relevant to the modern world. The prajna paramita and the Bodhisattva ideal kind of sprang about 500 years after the Buddha. And there's a whole kind of literature associated with the prajna paramita literature. There's about 40 different texts that started coming up from about year 100 to year 500. And some of them are very long, like the prajna paramita are 100,000 lines. Some of them are a bit shorter, the prajna paramita are 8,000 lines. One of them is very, very short. It's the prajna paramita in 1 syllable. And that syllable is a or a. And a is kind of like a negative prefix in Sanskrit. So a bit like how in English you have the words atypical or amoral. So not typical, not moral. It means not. So the prajna paramita in 1 syllable is not. So it means, a bit like I was saying before, anything you think about reality, it's not that. Any concept of reality, it's not that. Which is easy to remember, isn't it? There's also a couple of slightly longer ones, which are really important to us in our particular tradition in Sri Ratna, such as the Heart Sutra. So we were talking about the Dharma Day festival earlier on, and tomorrow some people are going to become mitras in part of this ritual we're going to have called the Sevenfold Puja, which is kind of this central ritual that we do in Sri Ratna. And in the Sevenfold Puja, you ask for a teaching from the Buddha or one of the enlightened beings. And the one we normally do in Sevenfold Puja is the Heart Sutra. So yeah, that's like a central text for us, a really important text for us. Also, the Diamond Sutra is also a really important text for us. It's a very important text to Sangharakshita, who's the founder of our order and movement. He read it, he came across it when he was about 16 in the 1940s, I think. And it had a really big effect on him. I'll just read a quote from him about the effect that had on him. Yes, this is Sangharakshita. The Diamond Sutra made an impression on me that can truly be described as tremendous. I call it an impression, but it was more like an impact. It was an overwhelming spiritual experience which changed the whole course of my life. Or perhaps I should say, it made me realize for the first time what the course of my life really was. It made me realize that I was a Buddhist, whatever that may mean. Though this book epitomizing a teaching of such rarefied sublimity that even arhants, saints who obtained individual nirvana, are said to become afraid and confused the first time they hear it. I at once joyfully embraced it with unqualified acceptance and assent. To me, the Diamond Sutra was not new. I had known it and believed it, and realized it ages before, and the reading of the sutra awoke in me something that I had forgotten. So yeah, it had a very powerful effect on our founder, Sangharakshita. So without it, perhaps we wouldn't be here today. So yeah, really kind of important text for us in our community. And the main theme of the Paramitas, all these sutras, is shunyata. So shunyata is kind of literally be translated as emptiness or voidness or hollowness, which in a way it sounds a bit negative, so don't necessarily give a great impression of what it is. And shunyata is a restatement of the Buddha's the central teaching of Buddhism, of conditioned co-production. So what that basically means is, what shunyata basically means is that nothing that we perceive, no phenomena, have an inherent fixed existence. So nothing exists independently, everything exists in a giant web of conditions, and nothing has inherent existence. So just to try and illustrate this, if you take, say, water is made up of H2O, so two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom, and they're kind of joined together. There's nothing called water that those things are kind of pinned together. They're like the sum of their parts, and then we give that kind of particular combination of particles the label water. But they don't. There's nothing called water that those things are stuck to. That makes sense. Same as you take a car. The car is made up of wheels, a motor, seats, windscreens, etc. And they all kind of come together. We put them together, and then we call it a car. But there's no thing called a car which all those elements are stuck to. They're kind of like the sum of their parts. And people are the same as this as well, according to Buddhism. So in Buddhism, there's no kind of essence of people. So if you were to look inside me, there's no kind of essence of Aryajit, no soul, no kind of Aryajit atom. we exist as like a flow of conditions, both physically and kind of mentally. Our mind is just like a flow of conditions. And we're all like this. You know, I've heard it described as recently as like whirlpools in a river. There's definitely something there, there's a shape and there's something going on there, but you can't say it's kind of exists of itself, you know, and we're like that as well. And that kind of may sound okay, that sounds interesting. It might sound a bit kind of disturbing, the idea that we don't exist in the way that we think we do, there's no soul. It might sound a bit nihilistic. But according to Buddhism, that is fantastic. That's when we realise that's what the real nature of ourselves is. That leads to freedom, that leads to release. Because all of the suffering we create for ourselves, all of the anger, the hatred, the fear, that's all created by the delusion that we exist as a fixed self, which is separate from everything else. So when we let go of that, there's no more fear, no more anger, no more hatred. There's just compassion and wisdom. So that's incredibly, well, it's reasonably easy to understand, but to actually take that into our being and emotionally understand it is a totally is a different thing. One of Bante's, Sangharakshita's most famous aphorisms is, we need to find emotional equivalents for our intellectual understandings. So if we were to find an emotional equivalent to that intellectual kind of concept of shunyata, we'd be free, we'd be a Buddha. But yeah, it's not easy because we're really clinging on to the idea of a self. And that's just how we kind of see the world. But according to the Buddhas, according to the Bodhisattva, the way we see the world is kind of a delusion. Sometimes the metaphor is like when we go to the cinema or go to the theatre. You know, the cinema is a projection of a picture, 24 frames a second. It's not real, is it? But if it's a really good film, we get really involved in the story and the characters. Even though the characters are just actors, and you know, it's a story, but we get really involved in it, and we get moved sometimes by it. Sometimes watching a film or watching a theatre can really change us, can't it? But then it comes to the end, and we don't go on believing it's real. We just go home. According to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we're kind of in a kind of film or a kind of a imaginary kind of world, which isn't really real. But we never kind of realize that. And we're constantly believed that it's real. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are trying to help us realize that it's not really real. All these things that we're kind of attached to don't have inherent existence. If any of that sounds a bit confusing or you don't understand it, don't worry, because with the Paramitas, we're kind of all out of our depth. So don't worry if that sounds a bit hard to understand. But let's have our first reading. So, Saki, if you want to read, this is a verse from the Diamond Sutra, which kind of has a sense of that idea that things are not as real as we think they are.
As stars. I think it's facing away now.
Oh, sorry, maybe I'm wrong. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. As stars, a fault of vision, as a lamp, a mock show, dewdrops, or a bubble, a dream, a lightning flash, or cloud, so should one view what is conditioned. Read it again.
Read it.
Read it again. As stars, a fault of vision, as a lamp, a mock show, dewdrops, or a bubble, a dream, a lightning flash or cloud, so should one view what is conditioned?
Okay, thank you, Saki. So, yeah, so just if you're wondering what is conditioned mean, that means anything that we kind of, as I was saying earlier, kind of put together and put a label on is conditioned. Yeah, that's probably the most famous kind of verse from the Diamond Sutra. There's also another quote I would like to hear now from The Tempest, which is Shakespeare, which Catherine's going to read. Does Catherine need to come close to the microphone? I think she'll be all right there.
Let's make sure I'm pointing towards her.
Okay.
Let's see how the other people follow.
Our revels now are ended. These, our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherits, shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made of. And our little life is rounded with a sleep.
Thank you, Catherine. So yeah, this idea that things are not quite what they seem really kind of goes against our natural way of seeing things, isn't it? Because it really does feel like I'm here now and I'm separate from everything else. There's me, the self, and then there's a world. And I'm sure you all feel like that as well. There's you, and then there's the rest of the world. And that's kind of just how we perceive things. So this, the Paramita is really kind of counterintuitive. It's really hard to kind of get our head around that and get an experience of it. We tend to see things in terms of subject and object. So, Ratnaprabha, if you read you've got your reading there. This is a reading from Sangharakshita from a seminar where he talks about subject and object.
When we look at a flower, that flower is providing the stimulus for our consciousness. Whatever the flower is, we can never know. It remains mysterious. Every moment of experience of an object and awareness is a single event of self and world in a moment of contact. Rather than any division between a thing called matter and a thing called mind, or a thing called body and a thing called consciousness, there's continuity running all the way through, continuity of awareness, patterned in different ways. If we really understand that, the inner and outer world become interfused in a deeper, more meaningful vision of what it is to be alive.
So, yeah, breaking down.
Turn the mic around.
So yeah, we're trying to break down that kind of subject-object dualism that we kind of is just the way that we perceive the world. I'm going to read a bit from the Heart Sutra now. We'll do a full reading of the Heart Sutra at the end, but just talk about a particular couple of verses. So in the Heart Sutra, it says, one verse, nor is there pain or cause of pain, or ceasing pain, or noble path to lead from pain. Not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So if you're at all familiar with Buddhism, probably the most famous teaching in Buddhism is a teaching of the Four Noble Truths, which is a teaching that the first teaching the Buddha gave after he became enlightenment. And this is saying there is no Four Noble Truths, saying there is not pain, cause of pain, or ceasing pain, or noble path to lead from pain, not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So it's kind of negating Buddhism, saying, well, really there is no teaching. So what does this mean? This is essentially saying we shouldn't cling even to anything, even to Buddhism. And this kind of idea goes back to the Buddha. The Buddha made the analogy, the Buddhism was like a raft. And if someone wants to get to the other side of the river, they make a raft. And then they use the raft to get to the other side of the river. And once they've got to the other side of the river, they don't carry the raft around with them, they discard the raft. And that's an analogy the Buddha was making for Buddhism itself. So we use Buddhism, the ideas of Buddhism, the concepts of Buddhism to become enlightened. But Buddhism isn't kind of an identity in itself. Ultimately, we're using Buddhism to go beyond concepts and ideas, which is made really explicit in the Prajna Paramita. And I think that's really, really important. I think that's one of the things that makes Buddhism really unique, is that it's trying to kind of negate itself ultimately. Because we have a tendency to be not only attached to our possessions and to other people and to ourselves, we're really attached to views. And it's kind of less easy to see that. And so the Prajna Paramita is saying, even Buddhism you have to let go of, even these concepts you have to let go of. And I think that's really important for us in our community, because it's easy to kind of take on being a Buddhist, if that's what we call ourselves, as a kind of an identity in itself. Even the kind of the most kind of noblest kind of causes can turn into ways that we kind of things that we use to kind of solidify our ego around. And you can see that happen sometimes in various forms of activism. It just becomes very kind of negative and angry. And you can see that sometimes with Buddhism. We all do it. I do it. You know, we kind of cling to anything we can use to cling up to kind of make an identity out, to kind of collect ourselves around. And then we kind of, and that becomes the way we kind of have an ego, if you see what I mean. It's quite hard to see that. So I think it's great that we have at the center of our community this teaching, which says we're trying to go beyond concepts, we're trying to go beyond any kind of ideology. Ultimately, there's nothing to cling on to. And even, you know, the most holy teachings are kind of discarded. So there's no Bible in Buddhism. There's no kind of holy book which is like this is the literal truth of God, and this is it, and you can't change it. Buddhism is saying no. It's just a way of we're using ideas and concepts to get beyond concepts. Because anywhere you've got kind of a concept to cling to, you have an ego, and then you have anger and hatred and delusion. So yeah. So Buddhism is a way somewhat iconoclastic. There is one Chinese Buddhist about the 19th century said, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. Which is, I think, you know, you can read that in a lot of different ways, but I think it's a way of saying don't become attached to Buddhism, don't kind of build your ego around Buddhism ultimately. So another quote from the Heart Sutra. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. So, so the Bodhisattva holding to nothing whatever. So he's not holding to any ideas about himself, ideas about the world. Dwelling in prajna wisdom, he's freed of delusive hindrance. So that's what kind of gives the Bodhisattva his power, his ability to be infinitely patient, with infinite energy, infinite generosity. He's dwelling in this wisdom of not holding on to anything. So yeah, ultimately we're trying to let go of everything, which is, you know, incredibly hard to do. You've probably all seen or heard Lord of the Rings or read it. In Lord of the Rings, if you don't know it, they're trying to destroy this ring, aren't they? They're walking around with this ring, and they need to go and drop it into that volcano and destroy it. And by destroying the ring, they destroy evil, and they just end this war kind of thing. But it's incredibly hard to do because it takes them over. It deludes them. And it's a bit like that with trying to get rid of the self. The self is kind of trying to destroy itself, which is really kind of hard to do. The idea of dropping the self is probably a bit misleading. What we generally need to do is just build up years and years of practice and gradually kind of see through the self, keep coming back to these teachings, keep coming back to meditation, and gradually we weaken the pull of the ego. The Bodhisattva's managed to do it. He's kind of taken a kind of existential bungee jump into reality. He's without a rope. He's just kind of let go into it, and he's found it's fine. It's okay. It's freedom, you know. So I just want to talk a bit more about the Bodhisattva ideal and bring it down to earth in a way. I think that the Bodhisattva is a very inspiring ideal. I think it's in a way, it's what we need. The Bodhisattva ideal is what we need, the version of Buddhism, the kind of statement of Buddhism that we really need in the world today. Could you read your quote, Kusa? This is a quote from Sangharakshita. At one point he said about the Bodhisattva. Oh, sorry.
In the Bodhisattva, Buddhism finds its highest expression and ultimate meaning. The Bodhisattva is indeed the meaning of life, the meaning of existence. In terms of Western thought, the Bodhisattva principle is the principle of perpetual self-transcendence.
Thanks, Kusa. So yeah, I said to Stuart, as we're going on, I was going to reveal the meaning of life and so on. So Bhante says that the meaning of life is a Bodhisattva ideal. So I brought in my Bodhisattva here from home. Yeah, I love this Bodhisattva. I think this is called Kuan Yin, who's a version of Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the Bodhisattva in the Heart Sutra. And one thing I really like about this particular vision of the Bodhisattva is, I hope you can all see it online. If not, I'll just describe it. So we're normally used to seeing Buddhas kind of like this, that are in meditation. So both their legs are kind of up in meditation. The Bodhisattva is often shown as one leg kind of stepping down. So like as if he's just coming out of meditation, or she's coming out of meditation. And she's stepping down into the world to save all beings. So it's often, the Bodhisattva is often described as being in the world, but not of it. So Kuan Yin here, she's got a foot rooted here, and that she's stepping into the world. So she's got a foot rooted in prajna, this kind of, she's not holding on to anything, but she's able to go in the world and try and lead people out of it. And, for most of us, I think that we're very much in the world, aren't we? We can't all become monks and nuns. So we're in the world, we're engaged in the world fully. So this is a kind of the Bodhisattva ideal is like a blueprint of how to be in the world, but stay in touch with what's most important to us. And the Bodhisattva is able to be in the world and be in touch with their greatest, their kind of deepest values, but we have to that's very difficult for us. We have to kind of go on retreat or meditate or come here and try and get in touch with those things and then go back into the world. But yeah, the Bodhisattva kind of represents that kind of being in the world. And there's kind of no thought of reward for the Bodhisattva. There's no thought of, doesn't need a thank you, doesn't need a please, because the Bodhisattva, it's just how the Bodhisattva is. The fact that they've got that prajna wisdom, they don't think of things in terms of self and other. There's an image of the Bodhisattva described as like the Bodhisattva plunges into the world, plunges into the next kind of job, plunges into the next kind of set of troubles, like an elephant plunging into a cool lotus pond at midday. Elephants are supposed to be very playful and splash each other and stuff when they get in the lotus pond. And that's what the Bodhisattva is in the world. Which I think if you want to take one image away from this talk, that's a lovely image, the idea of the Bodhisattva just being joyfully kind of engaged in the world. Do you think of that in your life? Often in my life, I'm kind of, when I'm working or doing stuff, I'm kind of want to get to the good stuff. I want to do my job or whatever. And then in the evening, I'll get to watch a film or go and meet somebody or whatever. And so I'm constantly kind of leaning, I think, when I get on retreat, then I'll start enjoying myself. Or, when I get ordained, then I'll start enjoying myself. Or, when I'm enlightened, then I'll start enjoying myself. But the Bodhisattva is just happy in what they're doing. In a sense, that is the goal of Buddhism, I think, just to be engaged in whatever we're doing. But without any kind of thought of a reward or an endpoint. So the Bodhisattva has said, well, I'm going to save all beings. I'm going to save all beings. That's the vow of the Bodhisattva. I think part of the point of that is that it's impossible. And that there's no endpoint. So we can't, so we just have to be involved in what we're doing, like the elephant plunging into the pool. We just have to be involved in what we're doing. We can't think of an endpoint, so we have to be in it. Yeah. So one way I think we can experience, I mean, we've talked about a lot of lofty things, haven't we? The Bodhisattva ideal, saving all beings and the highest wisdom and so on. I think, we've just been doing the Metta Bhavana this morning. I think for me, the Metta Bhavana is key to all this, because what we're trying to do is break down subject and object with the Metta Bhavana. We start with ourselves, go to a friend, and so on. We extend out and out until we're wishing all beings well. As Gyatso said this morning, throughout time and space, so we break the bonds of time and space with this practice. So I think it's a really important practice doing the Metta Bhavana and the Brahma Viharas. And that is a doorway for me, I think, into this. Like I said, compassion is the kind of emotional equivalent of wisdom. And we all have compassion. We all know what kindness is, and we can all get in touch with it and expand it. We're doing the Metta Bhavana and the practice of ethics and so on. So I thought we'll finish with a reading of the Heart Sutra. If you didn't take one of those and pass it on. So yeah, we'll just do a reading of this. And if you come tomorrow, we'll do a reading of this in the context of the puja. So just do come along tomorrow and just watch or take part in it. So I'll just explain at the end, there's a mantra, which most of it is in English. There's a few words, if you're new to all this, it may not be familiar. But at the end, there's a mantra, and I'll just explain what that means. So it's Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. So Gate means gone. So gone beyond. Paragate is often described as kind of going to the other shore, having gone to the other shore, which is I quite like that in terms of the parable of the raft I was talking about earlier. So it's gone to the other shore. Parasamgate means really gone, really well gone for good kind of thing. And Bodhi means enlightenment. And Svaha isn't, I don't think, translatable. It sometimes kind of means all hail or yippee. So it's gone beyond the other shore, well gone beyond the other shore. We're all enlightened, yippee. So that's what the last bit. And I'll start. So just think of the Heart Sutra as like a piece of poetry. There's lots of different translations of the Heart Sutra. And this is the one we're using through that. The Bodhisattva of compassion, when he meditated deeply, saw the emptiness of all five skandhas and sundered the bonds that caused him suffering. Here then, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is only emptiness, emptiness only form. Feeling, thought and choice, consciousness itself are the same as this. All things are by nature void. They are not born or destroyed, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So, in emptiness, no form, no feeling, thought or choice, nor is there consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no colour, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of, nor even act of sensing. No ignorance or end of it, nor all that comes of ignorance. No withering, no death, no end of them. Nor is there pain or cause of pain, or ceasing pain, or noble path to lead from pain, not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. Hear then the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the prajna paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe its truth. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha.